You're listening to Halfway There, episode number 192, Betty Lou Long and Raising Family in Faith. This one affects me because this is my grandma. Let's go. Hey friends, welcome to Halfway There. This is the show where we have honest conversations with ordinary Christians about today's Christian experience. I'm your host, Eric Nevins. Thank you so much for joining me. If you just found the show or if a friend told you about the show, I'm welcome. I'm glad you're here. And if you haven't had a chance to go out and give us a review or share the show somewhere or join us on Facebook, you can do all those things. Just go to halfwaytherepodcast.com. You can find them. I am so excited about today's episode, today's conversation, because the person that we have on today is really special to me. So one thing I've been thinking about as I've been doing the show over the last 4 years is my own heritage, my own spiritual heritage, and the people that have shaped my life and the people that, and kind of their religious history as well. And so at Christmas time, I made a very special ask to someone close to me. She's affectionately known in our household as Grandma Great, and she is my grandmother, Betty Lou Long. Grandma, welcome to Halfway There.
Hello, glad to be here.
It's so good to have you on the show. I've done this probably 200 times. Most of the time, they're not people that I know all that well already, so it's fun to have you here. What I'd like to do is just tell people a little bit about you and kind of where you are, and then we'll go back through your story. So we've been talking a little bit about how we're recording this in the middle of the Corona chaos, and you live in Des Moines, and you live in a place where you've got other people around, but you're not really seeing them right now.
No, we don't see each other at all.
Yeah. Has that been hard on you?
It's kind of lonesome, but no.
Yeah, that's good.
I can occupy myself.
That's good. Very good. Well, I want to hear about your story. So, now, if I remember right, I can't remember if you were born or when you were young, you lived in Monroe, Iowa?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we lived there when I was born. I was born in the county seat of Newton, but 14 miles away, but we lived in Monroe. My grandmother lived with us. So I had an older brother, and then my parents and grandma. And then I came along, and I probably upset the whole apple cart. I don't know. But it was a good time. We had a good, loving family, and grandma, when I heard her go, I knew I was not in trouble, because she never caused trouble. But I knew that I had done something displeasing. So, and then when I was, I don't know, in high school or so, grandma's sister came to spend the winters with us. She had never been married, so to come into a household with 3 children was a little hard on her, but we got along just fine.
Yeah, right. Wow. We don't do that as much anymore. Certainly,
No.
It seems like back in the day you would have your family around close.
Right. If today was like older days, I would be living with my family.
Right.
But I'm not.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way today. I'm really curious. I want to hear some stories about kind of that period of time. How long did you live in Monroe?
We lived in Monroe until I was 18. Okay. I had just graduated from high school, and 2 weeks later, we moved to Northwest Iowa, to Sac City. Okay. My dad had already moved up there in January, and my older brother went to stay with him part of the time. And then we moved to this house that I had never seen until the day we moved. And it was a fun experience, but kind of lonesome. My friends were all in Monroe.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't come with me.
Well, they didn't want to go.
No.
Interesting. I didn't realize that you grew up your whole life or well, till you were 18, like your whole childhood really in Monroe.
Yeah.
So you said the family is sort of religious. Do you remember what kind of church you went to?
We went to the Methodist church.
Methodist church. Okay.
It was a good Methodist church.
That's good.
In Monroe. Oh. Not so in Sac City.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. What do you remember about your parents kind of creating a spiritual climate for you?
They prayed together every night before they went to bed, went to sleep. They were very loving to us kids. They loved having us around, and we went to church together. And
was church at that time and today it's a very different, I think, church is still kind of our social circle though, certainly for students. Was it like that? Did you have like a youth group, or was there, what was that like?
Yes, we had a youth group, met on Sunday night. I think probably at 6:30 or 7:00 at night. And then church was at 8.
Oh, at 8 on Sunday night?
On Sunday night.
Oh, wow.
Well, you had to let the farmers get their milking done.
Ah.
You didn't start things very early.
Oh, right. Because everybody had to go do their work.
That's right.
And finish up, and then they would go to church.
That's true.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I'd never considered that. Because that would be late today. I'd be like 8:00. Now I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
Well, but if you got responsibilities, it's different.
That's right.
Oh,
you had the church to do, had to milk the cows and feed the pigs. And
did you guys have a farm?
No. We lived in town.
Because Grandpa was a businessman. He had a hardware store.
That's true.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so then you guys decided to move to Sac City. So, when did you kind of find personal faith? When did it become yours?
Well, I've always believed in Jesus. I was taught from all my life. I suppose I was about 12 years old. And it wasn't just a moment thing.
Sure.
It was a gradual thing. By the example of my parents and my grandmother. So that was fairly early age, but 12.
Yeah, that's good. So that makes sense to me that it would be sort of a gradual thing for you, because you had this kind of influence, and it would just be something that you sort of grew into.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember any moments at all when you when you consciously made a decision, even of like a small decision, to follow Jesus instead of not?
No, I really don't.
You don't? Okay.
I just took it for granted that's the way it was going to go.
Yeah, which makes sense. Which is really kind of that's great, right? I mean, that's a good story to have.
Oh, yes.
It's better than the alternatives sometimes.
True. Right.
So, okay. So you just kind of grew into your faith, the faith of your family.
Correct.
So when you turned 18 and you guys moved out to Sac City, now that's where I remember. So now obviously I wasn't around yet, but I remember the house in Sac City that you were talking about.
Yes.
Vaguely, I remember certain things about it. I remember the main floor, the big steps in the front, and the patio. Or what do you call it? The porch on the front.
Front porch.
Yeah, the front porch. That makes sense. And all of that. But so how did that? So you were lonely, obviously. You left your friends. What did you do? Did you end up going to college?
We moved in June, and I went away to college in September.
Okay. And where did you go?
I came to Des Moines, to Drake University.
Ah, Drake. Okay.
And I had been there many times because I took my piano lessons there all during high school. So,
did you drive clear to Des Moines to get piano lessons?
Well, no, that's when we were in Monroe.
Okay. Yeah, so that wasn't too far. That's like
I
half
could
an
take
hour.
the bus, or mother would take me up there. It was about 30 miles from
Wow.
Monroe. No,
Yeah.
I didn't drive. I didn't have a driver's license till after I graduated from high school.
Oh, okay. Could you have gotten one? You just didn't?
I guess that's the case.
Okay. Just curious how that worked.
Well, they never thought about teaching me to drive.
Why do you think that
My
is?
my older brother drove, of course, and probably wrecked the car a couple of times. That's what older boys do, don't they?
Yeah, I think so. I remember Uncle Phil.
Yeah. And so one day I asked my dad to take me out in the country to visit a friend. And we got in the car and I said, "Do you think I could learn to drive?" And he looked at me and he said, "I never thought of that."
Oh, wow. That's bad.
Yeah.
Why? That's funny. It just never occurred to him that you would need to drive at some point.
Well, we walked. It was a small town. We could walk all over town, any place we wanted to go. And a lot of my growing up years were during the war. Gas was rationed.
Oh, yeah.
So were tires. So we didn't take the car as much as we would now.
Yeah. So how old were you when the war started? We're talking about World War II?
Yes. Not the Civil War.
Right.
How old was I? I think I was in 6th grade.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So like right now I have a son, Josiah, who's 5th grade. So he's almost 6th grade. So right about his age, maybe 11, 12, something like that.
Right. Around there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What was your impression of the war? Was it a scary time or what was it like?
It was very scary to me. Although I felt safe. But we did have blackouts sometimes. One time when I was babysitting with, some old children, we had a blackout, and the whatever they called them, the people that checked that you were doing things right, came to the door and said he could see a little light around the shade of the living room blind. Scared me to death.
Oh, wow. Was there, so were you guys burning candles or what would you guys do for light?
You didn't.
Oh, you just didn't? You weren't allowed?
No.
Oh, wow. See, that's so interesting. So what's interesting to me about that is right now, I guess we're not quite to a situation like that at all, but nobody's leaving home and we're all supposed to be staying home unless we need to get a few things. And we'd never been through anything like that. Certainly the closest my generation has been through anything as kind of scary on a global scale is 9/11, maybe.
Right. That was scary.
That was pretty scary. Yeah. I remember. So, I talked to my cousin, Aaron. So just tell my audience, I know he's my cousin. I talk to him a couple times a week and they're about to have a baby. And I was just reflecting on that, thinking my first child was conceived before 9/11 and born after 9/11. And his is sort of the same with this epidemic,
Right.
It's kind of interesting. But, yeah, so those things can be kind of scary. That's
well, they are very scary, and I would lay awake at night. The news would be on, and I had a radio by my bed, and tried to picture what it might be like.
Yeah.
And then I didn't like that, so I turned on some music.
Yeah, right. So you wouldn't have been old enough to know. Did you have family members who went to war, or you wouldn't have had like friends because they wouldn't have been old enough yet?
No, some of my brother's classmates went.
Okay.
He was he was 4 years ahead of me in school. And some of his classmates were in the service, not home for their graduation.
Oh, wow.
Because they were stations elsewhere.
Yeah. Interesting.
But none of my friends were called up at that point. They were later.
Yeah, I was going to say they may have gone to Korea, perhaps.
Well, no.
No? Was that too late?
Let me think. You're pushing my brain here.
Okay, we'll slow down.
It was 1948 when, well, my brother graduated in 44.
Okay.
And I graduated in 48. So by then, I suppose some of them had been called up.
Yeah.
To graduate to serve, but no, they weren't on active duty, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So World War II ended in 45, and then I'm not exactly sure when Korea started, but it was sort of late 40s there.
Well, you're right. You probably are right.
So it would have been they would have been the right age for that, which was a hard war too. That was really tough. Did that shape you or your faith at all? Like, did you pray, or what was that like?
Yes, I prayed.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I'm just curious how that maybe would have shaped you. So one of the things that I think about your generation is you are a master of like just using everything, right?
Of what?
Of using everything that you guys would have. So you save all the plastic bags and all the things that you might need later.
We didn't even have plastic bags.
Well, I know back then you didn't, but you know what I mean?
Yes. We saved everything.
Right.
I'm still accused of that.
Right. But so that must have had an indelible effect on you. What was that? Did you just make you thrifty, or how do you think about that?
Well, I remember the rationing. Things were rationed. And I was the one that had to go downtown and stand in line to get a loaf of bread or some meat or the regular groceries. It taught me a lot about that maybe I wouldn't be able to get this tomorrow.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. I think when I've been thinking about that a little bit lately because of the idea, right now we have people. I went to the grocery store a couple of days ago and I had to wait in line for 20 minutes to just check out, right?
Oh.
We don't do that. That's not usual, right?
I talked to your Uncle Larry this morning, and he's in Florida right now, and they went to Home Depot and someplace else, and they only let a few people in at a time.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just trying to keep it under those limits. So interesting. So you've been through some of that before, even though it's been a really long time.
Well, I think we could always get in.
Yeah, right. It's a little different.
Couldn't get what you wanted.
I remember you telling a story. This is one that I would love to hear you tell a little bit about Grandpa Amer's books and in his store where he would, let people have things even though he knew they couldn't afford them right then because he was just helping people.
Mm-hmm. So.
Well, why? Well, I don't know if there's a story there or like why would was that just kind of who he was?
Well, a lot of people did that. They would just charge it and say, well, I'll come in and pay for it later. But there were some he knew he would never get that money. Mm. And we tried to collect some of it years later and never did get it.
And nothing, yeah.
And by that time, people could afford it, but they didn't think they needed to pay it.
Years later.
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. Okay. Okay. So you go to college at Drake.
I went to college for 4 years.
Okay. And what did you study? Did you study music or teaching?
No, I was a music major.
Yeah.
but music education so I could teach.
Okay.
I had a good experience. I loved it. I loved my piano teacher. I had the same piano teacher that I had in high school when I would come up to Drake every 2 weeks or so for a piano lesson. And it was a small enough school at that time to be comfortable. We knew everybody in our area, not in the college, but in the fine arts college. Knew most of them.
Yeah. Were you nervous about going to Des Moines? I guess you've been there before, so it wasn't a big deal. But
no, I wasn't too nervous, except I didn't understand what college was all about, like the hours.
Yeah.
How you figured the hours until it took about a week to figure that out.
Right.
That was okay.
Yeah, all those little things nobody tells you, right?
Right. Nobody explained that to me.
Right. That makes sense. Did you have a student group or something? How did you learn and grow in your faith during that time?
During college?
Yeah.
I don't know that I grew too much during that time, but I did go to church every Sunday.
Okay. Were you a wild? Were you like partying instead? Are you?
Not really partying.
Oh,
no.
Okay. All right.
I was pretty mild. And Grandpa started coming to call on me.
Uh-huh.
And so we did have a youth group that met a few times after Sunday evening service.
How did that go with Grandpa? I'm really fascinated in that story. I don't think I've ever heard it.
What? Grandpa?
Yeah. How'd you meet him?
He came into my dad's hardware store the night before Father's Day in 1948? Well, right after we'd moved to Sac City, so that was 48. And he wanted to buy a fishing rod for his dad for Father's Day. And we didn't have the kind he wanted. He wanted a short rod. I don't know. Never did figure that out. And
That's funny.
And it was the first night I had worked in the store. And so he went across the street and bought it from a competitor. I've accused him of that for years.
That's good ammo.
Didn't worry him at all. But so I didn't make that sale, but he did come back. And
you made some kind of sale, didn't you?
I did. And I don't know if you've ever heard the story, what he said to his friend after he came into the store.
Go ahead and tell it.
Well, I've always had trouble believing this, but he said that he told his friend, I'm going to marry that girl. And I've always accused him of being kind of pig-headed about that. How do you know I'd do that? But anyway, he did keep coming back, and we were married after I'd had 2 years of college.
Okay. And then did you guys move to Des Moines at that point? Because he was going.
We lived in the Drake Trailer Court.
Okay.
There at the college, and he went to Iowa State at Ames. They had I can't think of the word.
Did they have like a campus?
No, he had to go to Ames every day.
Oh wow.
He'd leave home an hour before he had to be in class and be home about an hour after he got out of class. They really had it set up really, really nice. And he had to drive our car once a week or something like that.
Gotcha. So he would kind of commute, but he had other people he'd commute with, so that.
Oh, yes.
It didn't have to just be him.
Yeah. I knew about when to expect him.
Yeah. That's good.
And it worked out well. They had a good time, I think.
Yeah. You said you didn't grow very much like during your college time. Why do you think that is?
I didn't do what?
You said you didn't grow very much during your college years. Like why do you think that is? Spiritually, probably.
Oh, I had too many distractions, and my friends in the fine arts college were not interested in that. But Grandpa and I went to church every Sunday, and um, it was okay after we were married.
Yeah. Okay. So your friends weren't really. Sounds like maybe
No.
they weren't believers.
Not really. They might have. No, they probably just didn't believe.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, when do you think you grew the most in your life spiritually?
After we had children.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Well, I never had a time that I didn't believe, but I realized that they needed to be well grounded, and that we needed to set a good example for them, as my parents had done for me. And so we just worked at it, and it came about.
Yeah. Yeah, you just kept going, right?
Right.
Yeah, interesting. What because I think of you guys as being very involved people. Because Grandpa, I know you always played piano or played organ for church,
Yes.
and Grandpa would lead in various capacities.
Yes.
So like how did that, was that something you guys did because you just wanted to, or because you had the skills, or what was that? Where was that motivated from?
Did I have skills?
No, I know you had skills.
I thought that's what you said.
No, I said, like, did you just serve because you could?
Yes, because I wanted to.
Yeah.
And it seemed like wherever we lived, they found out you could play the piano or you could play the organ, and they put you to work.
That was a pretty valuable skill.
Well, I enjoyed it. I always did.
Yeah.
And I still am.
Yeah, you still play for your gatherings?
I do here at the retirement home when we have chapel, but now these days we're not having chapel.
Right. Do you still sit down and play your piano?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I haven't much the last 2 weeks, but
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. Did what was it about music that drew you to it?
that what?
What was it about music that drew you to kind of studying it and learning it?
Oh, I just liked it. And later on, I found that being able to sit down and play the hymns was very comforting to me.
Is there a time when when playing hymns was especially comforting to you?
Yes. Whenever things seemed to be difficult, and there were difficult times financially and so forth, I would play them.
Okay.
And after we moved to Des Moines, I took lessons again from my former piano teacher, and I would practice at night after the children had gone to bed. And one of them commented the other day that they enjoyed that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they could listen to you play.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Very cool. Well, did you ever have a time when you feel like God was really far away?
Not particularly.
Okay.
Not really. I always knew that he was there. I didn't think he acted fast enough.
Were you ever angry with him?
What?
Were you ever angry with him?
Probably a couple times.
Like when?
Like when I had done something dumb. Why did you let me do that?
Yeah.
But I never doubted him.
Yeah, that's good. Interesting. Okay. Well, so I think it's interesting how you're having kids kind of shaped you a little bit to think more about, okay, we need to have a good example for them and be involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Were there any verses that were particularly special to you?
You know, one that I learned when I was quite young, but it stuck with me is may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer.
Yeah.
I like that, and it's served me well.
How, so give me an example of a time when that came to mind and it was comforting.
A time when that was comforting. When I would be upset about things, and there were lots of times that I was alone with the children because Grandpa was traveling, or when he taught school, he had something every night, and I just needed that comfort that would come from that verse.
Yeah, because that can be really lonely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And hard. Some of us are learning that right now, that where it's hard to be a mom or a dad and have responsibility for kids all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Did you do anything with the kids to help nurture their faith besides just take them to church?
Oh, we had a little routine for Christmas Eve. That's a story after we decorated the tree. Oh, well, that wasn't Christmas Eve. It was earlier in the year, but earlier in the month. But we talked about it, and yeah.
Well, I remember Christmas always being a very just wonderful time at your house. So
we enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, because we would always have these big celebrations, and all of the uncles. So my mom is your only girl, right?
Right.
I'm just sharing with my audience here. So and so all my uncles, and you have three other boys, and they would come over, and then eventually they had families. Although I'm old enough to remember when some of them didn't have families, and or then cousins would come over. And I remember the fire, and I remember warm, just being warmed by the fire and watching Grandpa throw, wrapping paper in the fire. That was always fun.
Mm-hmm.
Just always being, and good food. I remember the food a lot. That was good.
We like food. Well, you must be thinking about Christmas Eve when all the longs came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I don't know. Did we ever do that? Did we only do that then? Or did we sometimes do it later or without all the longs?
Do it when?
Did we do it all that? Did we only have that time when the Longs would come, or were there other times?
Oh, probably not the
Okay.
the the whole family. That was Christmas Eve, but
Yeah, yeah.
the brothers would get together. Grandpa had two brothers,
Great.
but it got a little harder as the children got older.
Yeah, eventually it's kind of tough,
Yeah.
but yeah, they would always come over. So right, that would be Grandpa's family.
Mm-hmm.
And from your family, what I remember certainly Grandma Amer. I remember her,
Yes.
and I remember playing anagrams with her in Sac City
Right.
because I don't know how long did she stay there.
In Sac City.
Yeah.
Oh, she lived there several years after my dad died. Let's see, he was 83. She must have lived there 5, 6 years after
Mm.
in that big house by herself. And then I talked her into coming to Des Moines. So she lived in the same retirement home that I live in now.
Right. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Although you wouldn't recognize it now.
No, it was a different place, wasn't it?
Well, there's some new buildings. And
Yeah.
although when I walk down one hall, I can see the room where she was in the health center.
Oh wow.
Not not where she lived when she first came because they've torn that down. But when she had to go to the health center, I can
Gotcha.
see that room, which is no longer there. Those rooms are not being used, but they're still there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I remember going to visit her there. I
Hmm.
don't know that we went a lot, but periodically I know we'd go.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you have the memory.
Yeah, which is kind of fun. I've been really struck by the idea that uh it's pretty special to have known my great grandparents, right? Because not everybody gets to do that.
That's true. I didn't know. I only knew one grandparent.
Just only one grandparent, period.
Period.
Wow.
I guess my grandma Amer was still living when I was born, and I suppose I was two when she died, but I have no recollection of her.
Yeah.
So, and both grandfathers were deceased before my parents were married. So
Okay.
I only really knew one grandma.
Yeah. See, that's amazing. And
And
I've been fortunate. This is about you, but I've been fortunate to have not only grandparents, but then also some great grandparents in my lifetime.
yes,
Yeah, and then and certainly even my kids. So they're pretty lucky to be able to know you, and I know they think the world of you as well. And
well,
Grandpa.
I'm privileged to know them.
Wow. Well, so what would you say if you had to sum it up in some kind of your relationship with God? What would you what would you say? How would you summarize that?
My relationship with God,
Yeah.
well, it's continuous. It's a blessing. Um, I'm glad, thrilled that I've always known him, known who he was, and um, can't say that I always was the ideal follower, but um, I'm so thankful for my upbringing.
Mm. Are there any other like inflection points or moments that stand out to you in your relationship with God as being really significant?
You know, when we've traveled and we've been blessed to do quite a bit of traveling, But I remember particularly one time when we were in New England in the fall, and the beauty that surrounded us. And it's true here, wherever we go, if you look for it, it can be such a beautiful thing. And I think, why did God do that for us? Why does he let us see this? But the New England trip really impressed me, and I've seen it in Europe and other places. Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. How did that make you feel?
Thankful. Just privileged just to see that the beauty around me, and him letting me see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think it's amazing when you get those moments to see just really the vast beauty, right? We can get caught in our lives sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but when you see just the vast beauty of the planet and the stars, sometimes do that for people, or mountains. I always love it when we get to drive up into the mountains. And yeah, that can be really impressive.
Yeah. And I have this next play, that Uncle Larry gave me.
Yeah.
And I have some beautiful pictures on there of you and Aaron in the sand dunes, whatever.
Yeah.
And the designs in the sand that I assume the wind did it.
Yep.
It's amazing. It's marvelous.
Well, Aaron tried to kill me on that trip. You can't. Not really. Not really. Yeah, it is beautiful. It is very beautiful. We went. So that's the Great Sand Dunes National Monument down in
right.
Colorado here. And he was like, "Hey, let's go up. Let's just go up a little ways." I was like, "All right." So we go a little ways. Let's go to the top of that hill. Okay. So I climb. Have you ever been there or been to like sand? You're climbing up sand. Oh,
no,
it's so hard. There. It's so hard. So you're climbing up sand, all the way, and then we get to the top. I'm like, okay, I don't work out. I should work out more, but I'm like huffing and puffing, and I've got glasses, and the wind's blowing sand. I'm worried about my glasses getting sandblasted. And I get, but it was nice because it kept the sand out of my eyes mostly. We get up there, and then he goes, "Oh, hey, let's go to the top of that one." And so then just like he did that like 10 times until we got to the very top of them. And I was like, "Oh, I can't go any further."
I see one picture on here where you're just sitting down.
Yeah.
And I can picture Aaron saying, "Come on, we're going on."
Yeah. That was basically how it was. It was a fun trip, but yeah, it absolutely is beautiful and gives you an impression of the Lord. That was a fun little trip.
I'm so glad that you cousins like to do those things together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I'm probably closest to him, but that's good. And we had a lot in common, so
that's good.
Sort of cultivated that. Well, so what do you think about? Because when I think about you, obviously I think about family, but I think of the sort of legacy of family as well. How do you think about family, and how do you think about how it influences people and their faith and maybe their lives?
Well, family is so important. And I feel sorry for people that don't have that. And we see a lot of that around us these days. What was your question? How does it influence me? Or
how do you think of family, and how do you think of it as an influencer?
I think it draws us together. God meant for us to be families. So when I see my family together, I am so thankful for them. That's one of the biggest gifts that I can have, is to have them together. That's how it influences me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I wonder, and maybe I can learn this from you, but I wonder, as I get older, I care less about what I get for Christmas, right?
Right.
And I care more about who I get to see.
That's true.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's family. We don't get back there often enough, so we just a couple times a year, but we get to see you. Always try to make an effort to see you.